Matt, Scott, Reuben, Elliot. Long ago, the four podcasters lived together in harmony. Then everything changed when the Australian nation attacked. Only the Doofcast, master of all four podcasters, could stop them. But when the world needed it most, it vanished. 100 years passed and we discovered the new Doofcast. Although its podcasting skills are great, it has a lot to learn before it's ready to save anyone. But I believe the Doofcast can save the world.
Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am an Earthbender.
And my name is Matt, and I am an Airbender.
This week on the show, we are doing another one of our patron-produced episodes. For those of you that don't know, folks that pledge to us at the Doof Warrior level on Patreon, that's patreon.com/doofmedia, get to select a topic for us to do a show on. This week, Patron A Bird has selected the first season of Avatar, The Last Airbender. And that's the television show, not the James Cameron movie.
Yep, and also not the other movie, and also not the new live-action TV show.
Oh, gosh.
But anyway, we're not alone. There are four elements, so it would be weird if we didn't have four podcasters. So we've asked our friends over at Media MD to join us for this one. Welcome, Water and Firebenders, Elliot and Reuben.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be here.
I'm here as the Firebender. I'm going to take over this podcast.
Oh no, not again.
I asked Matt what kind of bender he wanted to be. I didn't ask you guys. I just kind of made it so I hope that's okay.
I actually would have picked waterbender, so that's fine.
All right. Yeah, so we are going to spend a lot of time today talking all about season 1 of Avatar. I have only watched season 1. I think Matt's watched a little bit beyond that. I know the two of you have seen the whole thing, but we are going to limit this conversation to just season 1, book 1, Water, because, well, we're going to be covering the other two books at a future date on this podcast. But for right now, just season 1. So no spoilers, guys.
Sure thing.
Can do. I'm assuming we're not talking about the numerous tie-in comics and other shows and all that stuff as well.
No. I'm gonna put a kibosh on that. No, we're gonna stick to these 20 episodes of the show, and that's it. So yeah,
should be enough for us to talk about in 20 episodes. You would think.
I would hope.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna spend a little bit of time on Avatar, and then we got some more stuff to talk about at the end of the show. But I'm not gonna say what that is yet because sometimes we have to cut those, and then I feel annoyed that I talked about it at the beginning. But I guess just saying that their stuff is just like, you know what? Never mind. Let's move on to the main event. Guys, let's talk about Avatar, The Last Airbender.
So Elliot and I have obviously seen the show many times before. So I kind of want to let you guys lead the conversation and see your perspectives from, I guess, first-time viewers. What did you think?
Yeah. Matt, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were chatting about it earlier, and my very short kind of sales pitch for the show would be like, it's just really good storytelling. It's got a wide variety of like types of episode. It's never formulaic. Like it's not like a lot of cartoons aimed at kids where pretty much every week you know exactly what you're getting. You're going to get some kind of interesting challenge for the characters, and the characters are going to behave in a way that is not shallow, two-dimensional, or overly tropey. You know, the characters do kind of fit into archetypes because it's almost impossible to make characters that don't fit into tropes at all. But the characters, I think, are one of the strong suits of the show. Actually, just they all feel like unique individuals, and so a lot of the strength comes from that. And then there's a lot to say beyond that, but that would be my like, why should you watch it? Well, it's really refreshing to just see something that absolutely nails the storytelling.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I really like this show. I almost said love. I don't know if I'm there yet. I need a little more time with it. We got 2 more seasons to watch before I use the L word. But I was very impressed with just the show at like a base structural level. And I was thinking about this a lot as I was watching it, and I was thinking about the state of TV today. And TV today is still episodic in nature, but it's like a different kind of episodic. It's a thing where like episodes don't matter as distinct structural elements anymore. An episode is just an hour out of the whole story that was carved out, and we just carve it out and we put it out that way, and then you move on to the next one. This show is not like this. This show is a show where episodes matter, and episodes are distinct, and they have their own themes, and they have their own thing they're trying to overcome that's specific to this episode. But like Matt said, it's not formulaic. Like there's a chance for like episode of content to be like Monster of the Week type thing, where like every time it's like, okay, this is the bad guy they have to fight, and by 20 minutes into the show they're going to be in the third act and they're going to be overcoming the bad guy, and then everything's going to be fine by the end. It's not that type of show. But at a pure like structural level, like it's just so well done. Like just like it's just everything comes together in a very distinct, like you can tell what the, like you can almost tell like in the first 5 minutes, the cold open of the show is like, here's the topic we're going to be discussing today. Like I'm thinking of the one episode where they were dealing with like leadership within their central group and the struggles of who was in charge of the little central group, and our three characters are fighting about that. And then, of course, the main topic of the show is this idea of leadership, and they meet some other people who have different styles of leadership, and how that, like, it's just very clever and functionally fantastic in how it does that. And that made me like really appreciate it from just like outside the emotional attachment, just like appreciate it as writing. And so I really enjoyed it. I really did.
I think that's one of the strengths of the show is a lot of times when you think of, episodic content or Monster of the Week content or whatever you want to call it, especially in a children's show, there are episodes that are just there to kind of be entertaining and not necessarily develop part of the plot or part of the characters or whatever it is. But I'm looking at the list of episodes for season 1 of Avatar, and, the non-plot related episodes, there's always still a character beat or a piece of development that they're trying to achieve, regardless of, telling an interesting little self-contained story or anything like that. And I think that's what really makes it feel, cohesive and strong throughout the whole season.
I agree with that, because like the actual overarching plot of this show, at least specifically to this part of the season, is pretty minor. They're about, I think it's 10 episodes in. I don't remember exactly. That's when they get their first, like, the comet's coming. You have to be trained in all 3 other elements before the comet comes, because you have to stop the Fire Nation. Like, that's seems like what's going to be our overarching plot. And the movement on that plot is fairly minimal. But that doesn't mean that we're just like treading water, right? Like, I think every show has like filler episodes when it's literally just nothing's really advancing. But I feel like in this show, if they're not covering overarching plot, they're covering character. Like, this is the episode that's going to focus on this character. This is going to be the one that's all going to be about we're going to learn more about Zuko, and this is going to be this one. And I just feel like it's really clever in that.
Yeah, we have to talk about Zuko now. We've gone too long without talking about Zuko.
Just for those of you listening at home, Matt wrote down some brief notes on our script here, and he wrote down Zuko 5 times.
Yeah.
5 times.
Just 5 lines that say Zuko.
Yeah.
Zuko's so great because at the start of the story, if you don't really know what you're getting into, you're kind of like, oh, I guess this is Shredder. I guess this is like this is bad guy, and like his tone as a character kind of sells that, actually, because he's so brash and I will catch the Avatar, and then it gradually turns into just a very complex character who you have huge empathy for, even though throughout this season he never really has like a catharsis where he makes the right decision, as it were. He's pretty steadfastly gonna get the Avatar. But it's just, I think it's great how this show for kids basically is making you fully buy in and sympathetic with obviously the Aang and the other good guy protagonist. I say good guy because that's the terms my kids are going to use, obviously. But also you're sympathetic for Zuko, and it's an interesting position to be in where they're at odds with each other, but you're sympathetic to both sides.
Yeah, I think the reason Zuko is so great is because of having Zuko and the Fire Lord, the show kind of gets to have its cake and eat it too. Like, it gets its child show terribly evil villain. Like, the Fire Lord is just this person in the background who is just the evil lord. Mm-hmm. And then you have Zuko, who's kind of on the front lines, but he doesn't come across as one of those child cartoon bad guys who's just always failing and you don't take seriously, because they get to characterize him really well. And so having him as the front man for the Fire Nation, I think works really well.
Yeah, and I guess Zhao sort of serves the purpose as like the proximal henchman who gets gets his ass kicked a bunch. Yeah, that makes sense.
From a kind of technical level as well, I think it's a very cool way that they've done this, right? Because the show does mostly follow the kind of A plot, B plot structure that is common in shows like this.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time the B plot will just be Zuko and Aro doing a thing, and it's not related to the main crew at all, but you just get to see their life and their journey from a completely non-interacting with the Avatar perspective. It makes it quite engaging to follow the characterization.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, that's like when I think about the show, what I think about is just like, it's not doing anything crazy new with story structure, right? Like, it's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's just doing what it's doing really, really well. And I ended up comparing the show in my brain a lot to my favorite show of all time, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which, I mean, to me, saying that is like a huge compliment to the show. For those of you that don't know, like, I love Buffy. I love Buffy because, like the show, it is just very, very good at storytelling and character. It's what it succeeds at. And this is kind of a Buffy for children. And what I mean by that is, like, the whole concept around Buffy the Vampire Slayer is this idea of high school as hell, this idea of it's showing growing into adulthood through the lens of monsters and vampires and all this stuff. And I think this show is very much showing the struggles of adolescence through a similar thing. And what I love about that, going back to what we were talking about with Zuko, is this is almost the show teaching children about the concept of gray in a world of black and white. Because at the very start of the show, like, Fire Nation bad guys, right? Like, unquestionably, Fire Nation bad guys. They were the ones that attacked first. Like, they did all this stuff. Everyone in the Fire Nation is bad. That's what our characters believe, especially Ahsoka. That's what he believes, 100%. And then throughout the course of this season, we get to know these characters a little bit more. We get to know Zuko a little bit more, and we see that while, yes, the Fire Nation, not great, there's more layers to this. It's more complicated, and that's teaching children things. That's teaching children about the world a little bit, and through the lens of people with magical elemental powers. And I think that's really cool, and I think it's really effective in doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like a lot of the standalone episodes are built around that as well, like challenging preconceptions the characters have about just about anything is usually what a standalone episode's doing. I also think the reason I usually point to this show as an example of why episodic content can work, and I think a huge part of why I think that works so well, it sort of ties into what you were just saying. Like, I find myself caring a lot more. Like, there's obviously this plot of Aang has to save the world, but as we go around and each episode introduces us to people in this world, you really start to care more about, like, you know, all these little Earth Kingdom villages and whatnot. Like, I think it actually makes that overarching plot much more important when you're sort of brought in to care about all these villages and people in the world that Aang has to save.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. I think like a major theme of the story is actually, you know, you were talking about the idea that it's teaching children things. Like, a major theme is miscommunication and so many of these episodes hinge on not like who's going to win this fight, but are they going to be able to communicate and understand that they don't even need to fight, or like there's a spirit or something, and the trick isn't to defeat the spirit. The trick is to figure out what the spirit wants.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that happens all the time, where the answer is always figure out how to communicate and figure out how people's goals are actually aligned in ways that they may not even realize at first. That's the closest thing to a formula that I can find, actually, when I think back over the episodes.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I think a lot of that, like, the episode that really jumps out to me for some reason is the Northern Air Temple one, where Aang goes to the Northern Air Temple and he's like shocked and horrified at what they've done. And a lot of this, I think it's very clever, because a lot of this show is like the Fire Nation is the one with the technology, right? Everyone else, like the Water Nation, is obviously like very simplistic. They live in tribes. The Air Nation, or what was left of the Air Nation, seem very monkish. So they're like a very kind of, traditional way of life. The Earth Nation is the one that is like the most, I don't want to say civilized, but like modernized. But then the Fire Nation is unique in that they seem to have more technology than anyone else. But then we're introduced to this Air Temple episode where this guy has like completely taken over the air, like all his technological advances, and Aang gets there and he sees this desecration of this holy temple, and he's furious about it, and he wants to destroy all of it. And then he finds out that the guy's selling tech to the Air Temple, or to the Fire Nation rather. And I was really, really into this episode, because I really want to see what they have to say about this. And I think what the episode kind of lands on is that, like, sometimes things change, and it's not necessarily bad just because it's technology, but it's also not good. Like, we have to value some of the stuff in the past, but we can't be completely beholden to it. And that's like a powerful message to tell a little kid, I think. And I really liked it.
Yeah, I think one of the strengths of this show is the way it delivers messages, right? I mean, it is a children's show, and I remember when I was watching this when it first came out, Aang as a protagonist is he's so reluctant to fight, and he's always like, I'm never going to hurt somebody. There always has to be another way. And that's a really like powerful and different way of having your protagonist lead the show. And I think it manages to live up to that, making it interesting and different each time, always finding different solutions to solve your problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like tragic when he has to fight. And like you said, he avoids hurting people. Just to speak briefly about the idea of it being a kids show, it's interesting because I'm not sure what age this is targeted at, because I'm pretty sure it's targeted at kids older than my kids, because they watched it and they paid attention about as much as they pay attention to anything, which means that they're kind of in and out based on if it's a talking scene. It's not like they don't understand what's being said. It's that very often it's impossible for them to care about these complex, character interactions. And like, I think they may have like barely grasped the idea that Zuko isn't just a bad guy, but he feels like he has to obey his father. And so it's complicated. And beyond grasping it, I don't think they're really like absorbing and mulling over the implications of it. So I think it is targeted for older kids than they are.
Yeah. How old are your kids? Just so everyone knows.
Yeah. The older two are 5 and 6, and the younger one is not paying any attention at all.
So when this show was first coming out, I was, I think, 13 or 14, and I was kind of watching it at the time. And I remember it feels like this was one of the shows that had a bit of a formative like experience on my life, right? I mean, I'm now a vegetarian, and maybe there's some part of that can be tracked back to Aang. I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's definitely aimed at older than Nickelodeon's usual target demographic, which is I think what led to some production issues after the 3 seasons were over, because there was interest in maybe doing more, but Nickelodeon couldn't figure out how to sell toys with it, and that was sort of their main income stream at the time. So yeah, like I think the concerns about who exactly it's targeting are fair, because Nickelodeon didn't really manage to figure that out either.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like 9 to 13 is probably a fair range. That's what it feels like to me. Where it's just kids are just old enough to start really being interested in the layered, complicated nature of stuff, but not because Aang's 12, right? 112, sorry. But I feel like right around Aang's age would be pretty perfect for this show.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, I think I'm not complaining about the fact that I can't figure out who it's targeted at, because I think that it is being pretty smart for a kids show to the extent that an adult can watch it and be like, oh, I really love this Zuko arc. What's going to happen with Zuko? I want to find out. Like, I really want to find out what happens with Zuko. I'm not just like, for a kids show, this is pretty good. I'm like, no, I'm in on this character.
And I think that's one thing, like, just because we're saying this is a show meant for kids does not mean we're devaluing the show at all. Like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a show meant for teenage girls. Like, it's one of my favorite shows ever. Like, just because there's a specific target audience for something does not mean that anyone can love and find value in the show, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a show that appeals to adults as well as kids. Like, my dad's a huge fan of this show, and we introduced him to it when he was in his 50s. So I think it works really well, sort of regardless of your age. I think probably the first half of season 1 is maybe where I would say that that's less true. There are definitely some stumbles in the first half of season 1, which I think is just the show finding its legs. Like that's pretty normal for a show to bumble around a bit like that. And like going back and rewatching it now, there are a couple of episodes early on where I'm just like, oh, I don't enjoy this one that much on rewatches, but the rest of it, like about that halfway point season 1, they've really just found their stride, and then they start nailing it.
Yeah, I don't mean to keep talking about Buffy, but this was really like the time that I really understood what it must feel like to people who I tell over and over again to go watch that show, and they watch the first few episodes and they're like, because that was my initial reaction to the show. Like the first 3 or 4 episodes, I was like, okay, like this is not bad, but I'm not really seeing anything really that special here. And then the show kind of just won me over. Probably about the halfway point. I feel like episodes 7 and 8 are the first two-parter, and I really feel like, to me, that's when the show, I think, kind of really found its legs a little bit. Because that is when the overarching stakes of the show are defined, is at the end of that two-parter.
It also introduces the spirit world and a bunch of other things, and I think, you're right, just tonally, just really draws you in. Right. Like, that's the episode for me as well, where I think if you make it past there and you're still not into it, then maybe it's not for you.
Yeah. And then the episode that directly follows that is the waterbending scroll one, which I think is a really great episode because it shows like the frustration between characters when Aang is just like naturally good at learning this waterbending stuff, and I think there's like that. I mean, that episode is like a perfect example of this compact, like, it has a point, it has a theme, it has a lesson, it establishes it, it challenges it, and it has a resolution at the end.
Yeah.
I think that episode has one of my favorite lines, Uncle Iroh lines as well, when he delivers the, maybe that should be a proverb line. That always cracks me up.
We should say he's voiced by Mako, or he was, I think, in this season, because I think he died not long after this.
Yeah.
Was an incredible actor he's such a distinct voice, and I loved him a lot.
Right. I mean, like half of the reason why Zuko's character arc is fun is because of Iroh and their interaction and the push and pull of the two of them, and just like Iroh is your dad in the show, right? He's the wise, like, infinitely patient guy who has this sadness about him, and it's just so it's again, it's a very mature thing to be having in a kid show, and I really enjoy that. I want to talk.
Well, and he
go ahead,
sorry, he just like he comes in as this like I don't really care about anything, chill uncle, right? And then like over the course of the season, like his love of Zuko is kind of presented over the course of it, and like what he's willing to do and what he's willing to risk for his nephew is, I mean, it's really kind of endearing, their relationship. Like it just kind of sneaks up on you. You don't expect that. You're just like, oh, he's like the goofy comic relief uncle character, and then it's funny. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh my God, he really does care for him.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example of the show coming into its own. Like, you know, it starts out being quite for kids, and it's got Iroh and Sokka, who are very like, they're kind of the goofy comic relief characters. They don't have a lot of depth at the start of the first few episodes at least. And then as it kind of finds its footing and figures out, oh, we don't really want this to be for super young kids, those characters get a bit more depth and get fleshed out more.
Yeah. And Sokka is such a Xander. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep relating this to Buffy, but he is. Like the first episode, he's like the entitled asshole kind of nerdy dude who has serious problems with women. And then by the end of the show, or the end of this season at least, he's like fallen in love with the princess of the Northern Water Temple and is like super respectful of her. And like, it's like his arc's not done yet. I know that, but seeing his growth from just like the stuck up kind of asshole dude to a much more complex character, I think is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's a character that, sorry,
yeah,
go, Matt.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say he's a character that is a great example of one of the messages this show is trying to teach, right? Because when I was watching the show, Sokka is my age, and he's kind of this kid who's struggling with what we would now call toxic masculinity, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, back then I didn't really know that term, but he is this kind of role model of, hey, you can be a goofy guy, but also not be a huge jerk about it all the time.
Right. Well, and I think the thing I like about it is the show takes its time in kind of establishing why he is that way. Like he lives in a village where all the men are gone and they were like brutally killed. Or we find out later that not all of them were killed, but that's kind of our starting place, is that he's the only man left in the village, and he's like taken it upon himself to be the man of the village. So he's like really emphasized gender roles more than anyone normally would, because he's been put in this position. So like, while you're like, yeah, don't be that way, that's bad, at the same time you're like, I kind of get why you became that person.
Yeah, I think that's one of the ways that the show wins you over structurally, is that you realize later on in the show that stuff earlier in the show was highly intentional and well thought out. Like why is Sokka the only man from the village? You maybe even didn't notice it consciously when you were back at the water village, or like why is Iroh even with Zuko? Why would his uncle be hanging out with him? Like, oh, it's a cartoon, who cares, doesn't matter. No, it's because he has this like very deep, complicated reason for wanting to stay with and take care of and protect his nephew, and all these feelings of responsibility for things. And but like, yeah, if you're just watching the show thinking kids show, you don't have any expectations of it, and then later it shows you, hey, we thought all this through, and then you're like, oh, okay, I am on the same page now. Yeah,
I mean, like, I know we've been talking about Zuko a lot, but I like him a lot, and I want to talk about the reason for Zuko's banishment, right? Because I think it's this really interesting thing that they did in the show, where like he's kind of painted as this asshole. He's stuck up, like he's the son of the Fire Lord, so he's like entitled. And then we learn that the reason why he was banished is because he didn't want them to sacrifice people needlessly. And he didn't, and then like when he was challenged on this, he refused to raise his fists to his father, and was burned and banished. And so, I mean, that's like suddenly like, oh, wait, those are good things, right? Yeah. It's like, especially the idea that, no, I'm not going to fight you, father. Like Matt was talking earlier about how Aang uses violence as a last resort. He doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to hurt people. And we've now linked these two characters, this protagonist and this antagonist, to similar traits. Like we started making the moves that are gonna, I'm guessing, eventually result in these two people being on the same side. But I just think it's so cleverly done that way. And we first establish him as the the clear antagonist, like especially of the season. Like, I mean, we have the Admiral. I forgot his name. I'm sorry.
Zhao.
Zhao. Thank you. We have him, and he's like, I think, the boss. Like, he's the big bad of the season, I guess. But Zuko is clearly set up as the antagonist of the show, at least up until this point. And they're laying the seeds for that change, but it's done so cleverly, and they're not going to do it too early. I like it a lot.
Well, there's the incredibly fun episode 13 where the mysterious masked man rescues Aang from captivity by Zhao, and you're like, I mean, did you figure out that it was Zuko? I don't remember what I felt about this the first time I saw it. I probably guessed it was Zuko, but
I didn't. Until they showed the burn on his eye, no idea that was Zuko, and then I was like, oh shit, that's awesome.
Yeah. Isn't that a great like character twist for a show like this? That was awesome. I love that episode so much, and I love the fighting in that episode in particular. That's the one where it's like, you know the moment in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon where it's been like a really slow movie with a lot of talking, and then like within the span of 10 seconds, it's suddenly a wushu flying on rooftops movie. I felt like episode 13 was like that for this show, where it's like, oh my god, this is awesome. This is the just like the complexity of the fight choreography in that episode was so amazing.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Because we've been talking about the story, but I want to talk about the animation a little bit. So you guys know my objection to anime, quote unquote anime. This is not that style. I mean, it is and it isn't, right? Like, this is clearly clearly Japanese animation inspired in its art. Like,
and I think
definitely.
it's animated by an Asian. Is it Japanese? Maybe
it's
Korean.
Animation studio. I'm pretty sure it's Korean animation studios who handled all of it.
Yeah. However, I think this is done really well, and it's not like it's a Nickelodeon show, so it's not like world's best animation, right? But like, it compared to all the Nickelodeon shows I watched growing up, like Rugrats, like compared to the animation style, the quality of the animation for Rugrats and Doug, it's beautiful. I think it flows really well. Matt, you were talking about the fight choreography. I just think the movement animations are very smooth. It's never really distracting to me. Like, I had no complaints. I had no complaints of the style of the animation at all throughout this entire show. It does get a little anime-y in times, but I actually like those times. It made me laugh. Like when Aang did like anime boy faces, I just kind of laughed. Like, I didn't roll my eyes. I was just like, and I think it's because like, while it captures, like, this to me is a marrying of styles. Like, I think there's a lot of Western influence on the show, but it's obviously very Eastern inspired as well. And it works for me. Yeah.
I think that the emotion that Aang is communicating with his anime face is clear. Whereas I think you and I both have this problem where, like, when there's the weird like sweat drop on the character's head, I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Whereas Aang, it's like, I know Aang. I know what Aang is feeling here. That's great.
Yeah, I agree. The faces were all really expressive. Their movements were very expressive of both. Like I like that each of the airbending styles are unique. Like, you can tell in just the way they move and the way they fight. They are connected in some ways, but they each have their own uniqueness to it. And I think that's tied into the element itself. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it actually, it goes really deep. Like, I was hoping to get an opportunity to talk about this. Each individual bending style is actually based on a real martial art. So like, the choreography, they actually had real martial artists come in. So like, all waterbending moves are some sort of Tai Chi based thing. Firebending, some other Shaolin Kung Fu, I think. And, airbending is this other martial art that emphasizes, like quick movements. Like, it's
circles.
It's such a cool idea. And that extra effort they put in to choreograph the fights using techniques from real martial arts, I think, is what makes them so fantastic to watch.
Yeah. And that's really cool because, like, obviously, you got, like, Matt is very into martial arts, so he probably caught on to that specifically. I am not So I didn't, but I did notice it, right? And that's like, sometimes you wonder, like, are all these extra effort they put into the stuff, is it really worth it? And the answer is yes, because even if you don't recognize, these are clearly 4 distinct types of martial arts, like, you can still feel that, right? I felt it. I couldn't put it to words, but I felt it. And that's commitment, and it's really great.
I think the choices of martial art fit in so perfectly with that. I'm not really an expert on all this stuff. I looked all this up like after watching the show originally, but Tai Chi as a martial art is all about like flow through the body, and so of course that's a perfect fit for water bending, and Bulgar is all about like dodging and stuff, so it's perfect for air bending, and I forget the name of the one for earth bending, but it's all about having a rigid stance. So like I agree, and I think they're different enough and they're done well enough in the show that you don't need to necessarily know that they're different to just get it from watching it. Like the martial arts flow into the nature of the elements so well that it just feels so natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that, and it's too early in the story for me to know this for sure, but it's going to be something I'm paying attention to. I feel like Aang, the purpose of Aang's journey at this point is to become a master of the 3 other elements that he doesn't know. And I feel like there's going to be a thematic through line with that, where not only is he learning the bending from each of these different styles, but there's going to be a specific lesson related to water, related to earth, related to fire that I think he's going to learn. And it could, and I'm very excited to kind of get to look into the show and pick out what those are. I think only having one example of one is a little too soon for me, but it's definitely something I'm going to be paying attention as we move into the Earth book next season.
Yeah, it's cool how the show's taken its time too. Like, I on one level you might expect to be annoyed by like 20 episodes and we've only learned waterbending, but that hasn't been the case, right? It's all it's fun, and you enjoy the winding path that it's taking, and all of the characters and world that we're learning about.
Yeah. Cool.
The thing I really like hearing about in this discussion is, we're talking about the first season here, and we've touched on so many things like the characterization, like the animation, like the fighting styles and all that stuff. And in my mind, season 1 is always the worst of those. And so I'm very excited to see how you guys find the other 2 seasons, as it really it really starts to land a lot of what it's doing and solidify that stuff a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it felt like that to me. Like, it felt like they were, getting up to their pace, right? Like there's a lot of season 1 is the warm up. We get our legs, and then we kind of find where we want to go with it. And then as you start to understand your characters more, you've got those fleshed out, you're really more comfortable pushing against those characters, and that's when shows normally really start to get good.
Yeah, right. And you can already tell it's going somewhere. Like like what is Leonardo's arc in the Ninja Turtles TV show?
Learn to fight good, eat good pizza.
Yeah. He's the most static characters in history. But yeah, I mean, you can already tell like, oh, they know what they're doing here. All of these characters has their arc. Every single one of the main cast has a direction they're going, and they make significant progress on it in this first season, and we know that it's going somewhere interesting beyond here. So
yeah. Can we? The funny thing is, we dove into this conversation, and we didn't really spend a lot of time talking about like the central premise of the world, which I think is really cool. Like this basic understanding is like, okay, there's these 4 nations, and each of them, you just have this magical power, and then there's this one dude that can do all the powers, and they're really strong and awesome. Go. Like, I think that's just like putting aside everything else that we've talked about so far, that on its own is a really solid core premise, and I think that's a really great starting point.
Yeah.
For a show, and I think that's why the show works a lot as well as it does, is because you take a good premise, you put a good writing staff on it, and you got something special.
Yeah, and it's pretty simple too, right? It's
yeah.
I mean, like I think it's actually a strength that you pretty much did just explain the key moving parts of the premise, right?
Right.
Like, and it's a simple magic system. It's like, well, they kind of do martial arts moves, and then they're like their element comes out of their body, and it looks cool. and that's about it.
Yeah.
And then there's the Avatar, and he like can do everything. And that's
Yeah.
There you go.
I think sort of like what I was saying back about like Zuko. I think this is something the show does well. Is it has all those simple core premises like good, bad, and the four elements, and just builds on them so well. Like it starts with really simple stuff, but doesn't just let it be simple. It really does something with everything, and that's part of why it works so well, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like even the aspect of the Avatar, being this like I think everyone at a certain point in your life, you get sick of the chosen one trope because you see it too many times, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm like, first of all, it's hard to relate to the chosen one trope because no one is ever actually the chosen one in real life. But this show, I think, does it.
Speak for yourself, Matt.
I mean, knowing the chosen one is even worse. But like this show does a great job with making Aang absolutely nothing like the typical trope of the chosen one. Like he's such a better character than you're used to, and also the concept of how the Avatar works in this world is so much more. I guess it's almost limited. He has his moments. Like the show has its moments where he gets to be cool, but it doesn't really feel like Aang is the one doing it when he goes into his like Avatar mode, and so that kind of keeps him from being like overpowered as a character, and thus you stop thinking that he's under threat. And I don't know, they just make a lot of really clever decisions with how the Avatar. The concept of the Avatar manifests in the story that all come together to make the storytelling better.
I think one of the smartest decisions that they make is they show just how kind of crushed Aang is under the weight of being the Avatar, right?
Right.
A lot of the episodes are just diving into how traumatic being the Avatar has been for him so far, and how much pressure there is on him to do stuff. As well as his Avatar state is genuinely quite terrifying to the people who care about him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love the decision to do the locked in a boulder or an iceberg for 100 years. Like, I think that's a very clever thing to do. Like, you could have just made a show about this 12-year-old as the Avatar. He's been chosen and has to deal with it. But not only we did that, we also he ran away because he got scared. He ran away from his responsibilities, got trapped in an iceberg, and missed 100 years. So now not only like is he having to face up to his responsibilities, but he has a measure of guilt to that because in the last 100 years, his people were almost entirely slaughtered. The Fire Nation has taken over almost the entire world, except for a few cities, and a little bit of the Earth Nation is resisting them, but they're doing very well. So like he's got this guilt motivation that compounds with the amount of pressure he feels, and I just think that's a really great starting place for a character. And watching him deal with that is just inherently fascinating. Like it's fun and entertaining to watch someone struggle with that. It's like Buffy.
I mean, I wonder if there's any explicit inspiration from Buffy. I mean, I haven't seen Buffy, but like you are bringing up a lot of points where I'm like, that does sound similar.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably not specific. I mean, like they're just both playing on tried and true storytelling tropes that have existed forever, and they're taking those things and exploring them to do different things with them. So I mean, like I'm leaning into it a little bit, but they're both doing very similar things within the genres they're living in.
Sure. I mean, I guess if you're doing like long form episodic TV storytelling using kind of a cast of characters, some of whom are anti-heroes, you're going to be recycling a lot of the same tropes and character archetypes.
Yeah, it's like Zuko is Spike, Sokka is Xander, Katara is Willow. I mean, this just really lines up itself. They don't really have a Giles. They need a Giles.
Iroh's kind of a Giles. He's just on the wrong side.
He's on the wrong side. He needs to join the good guys and be their Giles.
I think one other thing I want to talk about for the show is it only really came up for me in this rewatching, but each of these episodes is only like 22 minutes. It's also efficient.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised at how much depth they're able to get out of a lot of these single episode kind of plot lines in just 20 minutes. It's all very well put together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And the one thing that I like, and this is better in some episodes than other, but like sometimes the kids cartoon commercial break like setup thing is over the top for me. Like sometimes I'm just like, okay, calm down, show. When it like, oh no, scary new thing, zoom in on character's face and play dear music so you can cut the commercial break. Like,
and repeat that line after it fades to black is always the one that gets me.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like the show does it a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah. What's funny about that is that my kids have like no understanding at all about what that is or where it comes from. and even if I were to be like, that's where the commercial they would come in, I would be like, they would just be like, what commercials?
What's a commercial?
Yeah.
A better time.
It's like the YouTube ad roll. Okay.
There you go. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like we're getting towards the end here. Like, we could probably keep talking for a while, but did you either of you guys have anything you wanted specifically to talk about that we didn't bring up?
Well, I think it's, from my perspective, I don't want to just kind of dive into talking about each of the parts that I love, because I think we could be here for a very long time.
I mean, we
talking
can
about,
do that.
I really like this thing. I really like this thing. I think one more thing I want to pull out is the visual gags in this show are very fun. There's one specific one that I really love, which is they go to the main three go to a festival, and they have to get out masks to disguise themselves. And they get a sad mask for Aang and a happy mask for Sokka. And Katara looks at them and just kind of quietly swaps their masks. It's a very quick, like 3-second little joke, but there are a lot of these kinds of things just peppered throughout the show. You know, things like animal humor from the different like combined animals that exist in the world, all kinds of very fun things.
Yeah. The weird animals are really cool. We haven't talked about that. We haven't talked about, he has a freaking flying buffalo, which is amazing. And all the different kinds of animals, like the scary spirit that ends up being a panda. The platypus bear, was that one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
almost all the animals in the show
are hybrids. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think is the motivating factor of that choice? Was it just like, let's do weird stuff, or was it something specific?
Probably just cute.
I feel like the answer is just let's try and be a bit different. You know, I think a lot of the show is we're playing at tropes and we want to do them really well, but kind of stand out. And I think there's a lot of decisions like that factor into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to do something that's going to be recognizable and yet different, and so it's not just a bunch of monsters.
Can we talk about Katara for a little bit? I feel like we haven't talked about her, and that's criminal because I think she's incredible. Because she's kind of like I feel like she's the most adult out of anyone. Yeah. She's the oldest, right?
She's
for sure.
She's the straight man of the show. Like she's the audience insert, actually.
I actually think Sokka is older than Katara, right? Am I wrong about that?
You're probably right, but it's also Sokka, so he.
Well, emotionally, he's not older than her, but
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, she's the one really like motivating. Like, a lot of the central conflicts around the episode revolve around like her making choices for the groups, or her like saying, no, Aang, you can't act like that. Like, which I don't want to peg her as just like the person that's like telling the other characters no, but she's like usually the most responsible. But I really like her. I really like her arc in this season. Like, I think it's really great because we start off with this person who's like, she's very, she's okay with waterbending. And then she really kind of finds her own by the end of it. Like the final episodes, the waterbending master episode where she proves herself as like this amazing waterbender to a man who refuses to teach her because she's a woman. Like, I think it's a cool episode. And like, yeah, I'm like, it's not like female empowerment, like in a really like subversive way at all. It's like very upfront and obvious and simple, but this is a show for kids, right? And so like this is a show that we've just taught kids like, hey, you shouldn't treat people this way because they could actually be just total badasses, and that she kind of proves that. And like it doesn't give her that right away, right? Like she earns that over the course of the show. Like we had that whole episode where she was struggling with waterbending and she was jealous of Aang because Aang was just getting it and she just wasn't. But through the course of the show, we see her working and practicing and learning new parts of it. And then finally, when given the opportunity, she proves herself. And I think that's a really, really great little arc. And I'm really interested to see where she goes from there.
Katara is a very interesting character. I think a lot of the times she is the straight man, but she's not. She's a badass kind of female lead, but she's also got her own set of flaws, which make her quite, human. One of my favorite episodes for that is Jet, where she kind of gets lured into this very anti-Fire Nation camp and doesn't kind of realize that they're committing war crimes and doing quite bad things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, God, we should talk about that episode because I think that's another good example of the show taking its simple central premise and kind of poking at it a little bit and saying, okay, the Fire Nation, bad guy, everyone else, good guys. However, look at this. And I mean, I think you're absolutely right that Katara's involvement in that is really exploring some of her flaws as a character.
Yeah, I think the same thing is a bit true for Aang in that episode, where they both kind of get suckered into this, like, hey, we can kind of play at being guerrilla fighters and really stick it to the Fire Nation and not really think about the kind of what war actually really means.
Right, and think about what just the simple black and white of bad guy versus good guy, and how that's not always the case. Yeah, I love that episode. I love Katara. I think she's great. She's like, I look at all three of our characters and my big thing is like, where are they going to go? Like, what are we going to do next? What are we going to push them up against? What are they going to learn? How are they going to be challenged? Like, I think Aang's future is the most obvious because like the show kind of centers around him. So like his challenges, I think, are easier to guess. But the rest of them, like what is Sokka going to be put up against next season? Like that's where I'm really curious, and that's where I think is a good example of when character writing is working. When you're like, I don't know what challenges they're gonna overcome. I don't know what part of their character is going to be really explored, examined, and maybe forced to change. I don't know, and I'm into it.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I don't want to comment on that too much.
Yeah,
but
I just said a whole bunch of things you guys can't say anything on at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I've only watched a couple of episodes from the next season, so I'm excited to be let loose to continue watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, Matt. I mean, so what do you think? Do you want to offer guesses about where the show's going next season? So, like, I mean, we can make guesses like about I was talking about like each of the elements represents a key fundamental thing that Aang needs to learn, not just the bending, but probably some sort of overarching thematic stuff too. Do you have any guesses on those?
I see. I don't think I should because I think that I've been exposed to the show like tangentially enough times that I kind of know what the outlines are going to be, and
well, that's cheating.
I've probably at some point watched like videos of all of the major fight scenes from the show because I wanted to see the animation, because that's the kind of thing that I would do. So yeah, I'm not gonna indulge in your predicting game, Scott.
Fine. What type of bender would you want to be?
I'm an airbender.
You are an airbender.
I'm an airbender.
Is that just because you like to fly?
It's because I would like to fly. It's because I'd like to fly with the glider. And also,
it does look fun, doesn't it?
I used to want to learn Bagua. Like I went through this period of time where I would like buy books about that particular style and like try desperately to find like a dojo where I could learn it, but that doesn't exist in Texas or anywhere in America as far as I can tell, or at least it didn't back when I was a teenager and obsessed with it.
Also, you get a flying bison if you're an airbender, which I think is probably the best perk.
That's true. That would be really that would be nice.
So can you guys answer a question for me that I don't think it spelled out, but are the arrow tattoos, is that just what airbenders have? Is it just like any airbender gets the arrow tattoos?
Yeah, I think they go into it a bit more, but it's sort of a sign that you're an accomplished airbender or something.
Gotcha.
Something like that. I'm trying to keep it vague, but yeah.
Yeah, because I know one of the flashbacks, Aang did not have them yet. Or Aang did, but he was training with other young airbenders that did not have them. So
yeah, I think it's like one of the signs that you're moving up in the ranks of airbenders.
Gotcha. I mean, I feel like the airbender and the firebender have a distinct advantage because they can create their element, whereas the others, like the waterbender needs water around.
Yeah.
And the earthbender, like, apparently can't work with metal, even though that's ore. That seems unfair.
Yeah.
There's some balance tweaks that happen later on in the seasons to do some interesting things.
That's cool.
Well, that's good to know.
I mean, it definitely seems like on its face, the firebenders just have an utter, like a complete advantage because you can't even like touch their element. Like it's just pure destructive power.
Yeah.
It's like, I would you rather be hit by fire or by water? It's not a difficult question.
But what if I can turn that water into ice?
Well, I think the interesting thing about this is we think, we're all kind of thinking of them as having a definite advantage, but that's only when you frame it through the lens of fighting and hurting people is good.
Touche.
From basically any other perspective, the firebenders have the weakest power, right? The least helpful power in a lot of ways.
Can't manipulate substance. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense for them to be the primary, aggressive antagonist because that's really all that their power is good for is offensive attacking, whereas the rest of them, they can be used, like earthbenders can help build structures, waterbenders, they can also heal, which is really cool. Everyone else, yes, has non-combat, and I'm sure there are like non-combat things a firebender can do, but yeah, fire is destructive, and they are a destructive group of people. Do you I think one of my favorite things was when we saw the tanks in the big combat thing, and they go inside the tanks, and it's not actually artillery; it's just a bender in there, like shooting fireballs. That was really cool.
yeah, that's the kind of stuff where it's like it's all thought through. Like, they're I think the ships are similar too, right?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think they're launching. Like it's like a catapult or a trebuchet, but they're lighting the stuff on fire before they launch it.
Yeah.
Another example I really like is in the city of Omashu. They have this big transport system that's all like rock little carts and rock kind of paths.
Yeah.
And because they're all earthbenders, they can obviously kind of manipulate this really easily, and it makes for a nice kind of efficient mail system.
Yeah. And then the first thing you say when you see that is, "Oh my god, I want to play on that," and then that's like half the episode.
Yeah.
And I like that. That's the King of Omashu episode, right? Like I think that was really great because like it was a fun episode. We get to learn more about the Earthbenders, but it also has Aang directly like come into contact with the person that he knew. Like the show doesn't spend a lot of time on the fact that he's lost 100 years and doesn't know anyone, but it does spend some time on it. And I think I think it's important that it spends that time without making the show like entirely like dour and depressed, because that's just not the type of person Aang is. But I like episodes where we get to see the consequences of that time loss for him.
Yeah, I really like, I think it's like episode 12 or so, The Storm, where it's really the first one where this old man calls Aang out on disappearing for 100 years. And that's one of the first times where you see that there are people in this world who are pretty angry with him for disappearing for 100 years. And, they're not necessarily happy that he's back because they're still mad that he left.
Yeah, I like that a lot because you take that and you compare it with the Warriors of Kyoshi episode where like people are just honoring him and obsessed with him, and all the little girls like are like following him around like he's a rock star. And like so like you have this thing, he's like the most powerful person in the world. He's there to save everyone, and so a lot of people are going to be excited about him, and there's a lot of pressure put on you from that expectation. But yeah, on that other side, you have a lot of anger from people who feel like, where the hell have you been? You haven't been doing your job. Like you failed us for 100 years. And the fact that we get to explore both sides of that central feeling is great. I'm so glad that the show's willing to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean, and it all makes sense because in the Kyoshi episode they bring up like the island of Kyoshi has actually stayed out of the war till now, so they haven't really lost as much. So they're just excited that it might turn around and they won't have to worry. Whereas like there are obviously people who have lost a lot in this war, and they're the ones who are more bitter. So it all kind of, I think it works really well naturally, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because in a way it's like the anti-shonen. In terms of comparing it to anime, because like the story, not only does it not let Aang be a badass, like when Aang is being a badass, it's usually like the avatar state actually being a badass. But when Aang lets it get to his head, like in any way, Katara is there to like bring him down to earth, and so the show is very much not like allowing it to turn into, oh, isn't this awesome? Isn't it awesome to be so powerful and be able to kick everybody's ass? I think that's cool and very appealing.
Yeah. So is that it, guys? Do we talk about Avatar enough?
It's tough to not think of anything else that involves spoilers.
Yeah, I know it's really hard for each of you guys because you're having to like check everything you say based off like, was this a season 1 thing? Was it not?
I've got the list of episodes right in front of me for that exact purpose.
Right, yeah. So I mean, we're gonna be back 2 weeks from right now with season 2. Because our next patron in the list said, oh, they're doing book 1? Well, I'm going to do book 2. So we will be back covering all 20 episodes in the second season in a couple weeks. But for now, that's it with Avatar. I'm excited, Matt. I'm excited to get into this again. I think as soon as we finish up here, I'm probably going to go start watching those episodes.
Well, yeah, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait and have it on with my kids and see if they pay attention.
See if they're picking up on it anymore.
Yeah.
Has a third patron signed up to get you to do book 3, or what's the deal?
They have, yes.
Oh, wow.
It's not going to be right away. There's 2 other patrons in between season 2 and season 3 that we have to cover, but we will be doing season 3. Probably, it looks like it's going to land at the beginning of July if we keep up with our current schedule, which who knows if we keep up with the current schedule, but it'll be soon-ish. It'll be within the next few months. So yeah, we'll be covering all of Avatar. You know what? I'm glad we get to do this. Like, I mean, honestly, like I don't want to disappoint the patrons who have picked it, but I probably would have kept watching this anyway, so you didn't have to make me. But
yeah, we wouldn't have necessarily done shows on it. So
no, we would not have done shows on it. So this is a way to keep us talking about this show, which I'm happy to do. Like, there's parts of this that like every so often I watch a show that makes me go in the back of my head. It's like, no, you know, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to do like an episode by episode show about this. And then I have to like stop myself and say, no, I have too much to do.
Too many.
This was one of the shows where like in the back of my head, I'd be like, you know, I think we'd have enough to say to make like a 30-minute show for every one of these 30-minute episodes, or more knowing me. But,
yeah,
so
be
I'm
careful
glad-
promising 20-minute episodes on each thing because it can really scale out.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you guys for your scope creep. It's making me happy. But yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about seasons 2 and 3. I think there's going to be a lot to say there, and I'm excited to see where the show goes. So that's Avatar.
Avatar season 1.
Zuko.
Book 1. Sorry, Zuko.
Oh yeah, we only talked about Zuko once. We've still got 4 more times.
Oh yeah, 4 more times.
Zuko.
Yeah, I feel like
So
I feel like we worked him in.
So that's Zuko, guys. How about that eye scar? It's pretty rough.
It's just rough. Yeah, his dad did it to him.
What a jerk.
So sad.
Yeah.
Well, no comment. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see you guys step into seasons 2 and 3 as well. I can't wait to hear those episodes.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time, I think. I don't know if we're gonna have you guys back for that or not. I know it's difficult for their schedules to line up, but if you're available, we'd love to have you. But maybe let you take the chains off a little bit and talk about more of the show.
Yeah.
You only have one season you have to worry about accidentally spoiling. Doof. All right, guys. Well, before we go, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. The first one here, we hinted towards this last week, but we ran out of time. But we have time this week, so we're going to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh boy.
I'm so glad I'm here for this.
I know everyone's really excited. So last week, the Sonic the Hedgehog, well, it was 2 weeks ago now. The Sonic the Hedgehog trailer dropped. It wasn't good. Matt, what did you think about it?
Whoa!
I thought it was great. It was a late '90s movie trailer, and I was like, oh, this is exactly what it should be. This is exactly what a Sonic trailer should be. It's hitting all of the right emotional beats. It's got Jim Carrey, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, and he's doing Jim Carrey.
Yeah, this is a movie from 20 years ago that they magically teleported into the present. And I mean, Jim Carrey also looks like he's 20 years younger too somehow. And then of course
that's where all the CGI went.
Yeah, I was about to say the CGI also.
Then there's the fact that the Sonic creature looks,
creature is an apt
Sonic
word.
Creature.
The Sonic creature is the best way to describe it. Yeah.
And then of course the end of this story is that everyone complained and made fun of the Sonic appearance so much that they're now going to change it.
Yeah. And that's really the part that I wanted to talk to you guys about, because I want to get your opinion on this, because I think this is important that this happened. So they made a design. Look, I don't think it's a good design, but I think it's distinctly their design. They made it, they committed to it, and they put it on the screen, and they made us watch a trailer with it in it. And now they're going to undo all that. And I can't look at this in any way, but this is bad news. Like I just...
The interesting... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The interesting thing to me about this whole thing is it's bred a lot of conspiracy theories, which is something that's a very wild thing to think about. Like, people thinking that they knew that from the poster that the design would be hated, and so they already had started working on a new design, and they kind of just released the trailer to kind of earn brownie points for changing it. Or there are a number of kind of different conspiracy theories going around about what actually is happening behind the scenes here that are going to, I think, lead to a very interesting story regardless of what ends up happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put a lot of credence on those. Like, I don't know if we're gonna galaxy brain the people that are deciding to greenlight a Sonic movie to that extent. But I just like this idea that people complain enough to where a movie's gonna change its direction. I think is bad. I think it's bad because they're going to work the hell out of these animators for the next few months to get this thing out in time. I think it's bad because, like it or not, this was what the dude in charge of the movie decided he wanted it to look like. And this reminds me of the Mass Effect 3 ending, when people lost their shit about hating the ending and like BioWare came out with a different one. I'm just like, look, like that's their design. That's the ending. You can not see the movie if you don't want to, but that's what it is. And I just like feel like this idea that we like have felt like we've empowered a bunch of angry people on Twitter to whine about things until they're changed is bad. It's not good. I don't want it to be that way.
I guess I would agree definitely on that last point, but I would call into question how much there was a central vision behind a movie like this. Like I have a feel, we've seen movies like Suicide Squad that maybe had potential at one point, but were kind of destroyed in a way by, meddling from the powers that be. And I could believe that something like a Sonic movie would have something similar, where people who maybe shouldn't have a say are sort of injecting their own opinions into it, and it isn't as cohesive as it would have been originally.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Plus, I mean, Sonic is already like a garbage intellectual property. Like, I mean, it's already that. Like, as a video game franchise, it's just like, let's crank out more of these. In this one, Sonic turns into a monster at nighttime, and now we've got and edgy '90s stuff. We got Knuckles.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, I love to compare Sonic to The Legend of Zelda because both are franchises that tend to try and completely reinvent themselves every 2 or 3 years, and Zelda almost pulls it off successfully every time, whereas I don't think Sonic ever has. So it's interesting. Constantly refreshing yourself isn't necessarily a sign that things are bad, but in Sonic's case, it definitely is.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes me believe the conspiracy theories is Sonic has such a brand of being bad, right? I mean, to the extent that the official Sonic Twitter is posting Sonic memes all day and stuff like that, where it's like very weird. I don't know. I wouldn't put anything past the Sonic brand at this point.
I just like the idea. I would love this conspiracy theory to be true because I think it's hilarious that like we built 2 designs and then we're like, gotcha, here's the real one. But I don't know. I'm like what I'm imagining is like a boardroom meeting where they're showing like a 3D model of Sonic and you got like a guy in a suit, and he's like, more teeth.
Yeah.
Put the teeth in there. What are those on his
Teeth
hand?
are big this year.
Right. Well, I mean, you can almost imagine exactly how it went because somebody was like, well, we want it to look more realistic because we're using realistic CGI. We don't want it to look cartoony and like it's a throwback to the 90s. And of course, everyone actually wants it to look cartoony.
Yeah, of course. Like, why would you make the movie? Like, it doesn't like. He's not even a hedgehog. Like, look, he doesn't look like anything. Just make him a cartoon. Commit to the cartoon.
Because I mean, he still doesn't really look realistic. Like they focused on the wrong parts of him. If realistic is what they were going for, like we've already brought up the teeth and like the fingernails. Whereas, you look at something like Detective Pikachu, which like inevitably this movie is already getting compared to a lot, and like Detective Pikachu has gone for like scaly lizard skin on the Charizard and furry stuff on the Pikachu based on the trailers, and it looks realistic, but it also works so well and still immediately invokes the imagery of like the original cartoons and Game Boy games. Whereas like Sonic, they focused on making the wrong bits of him realistic and still left the other bits a mess. And so it's just a mess.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of the uncanny valley, actually.
Yeah.
I mean,
the decision to make his hands white but not be gloves doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like I just don't like from a design aesthetic. I'm just like, why would you do that? What? It doesn't make any sense.
He says white paws and he has like 3. He has a bunch of like solid groupings of his fur that go backwards from his head in a tapered fashion.
I love the decision that it seems like they're making him an alien as well, which I don't even know what the mindset there is.
I'm here to save your planet. What?
What? From Jim Carrey.
I'm gonna open myself up a bit, but me and my sisters actually went through a big phase as kids where we were really into Sonic X, which was like an anime Sonic thing. Because it came bundled with like a video game we bought, and in that he was from a parallel world. So I have a feeling maybe they're doing that tack again. But,
yeah, well, we do see that they use rings to teleport for reasons.
Well, Marvel-based
it worked
reasons.
In Doctor Strange, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, in the Sonic games, when you collect 100 rings, you teleport. You go through there's parts where you go through a giant ring. I don't remember when, but there's parts where you go through a giant ring. Matt is continuing to put weird CG pictures in the script, and it's throwing me off as I'm talking.
Yeah, if nothing else, this movie has inspired an absolutely incredible fan art response.
Yeah. Well,
it's been amazing.
My brother Daniel, friend of the cast, made this delightful tweet that was basically like, this is how you get the huge amount of free advertising: is you take you take a childhood property that was beloved by all, and then just don't even look at the source material, and just completely make it ridiculous, and then everyone gives you free advertising for it.
Yeah. Well,
of course, as Reuben said, Sonic is so far beyond having any legitimate source material at this point that I think it's fair to kind of ignore it.
Yeah, and look, I am excited to see this movie. I'm going to go see it, and I'm going to probably have fun with it because it looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think I would have more fun with it if the Sonic design were terrible. And so I think fixing the design is going to hurt the movie for me.
I honestly think that
interesting.
I think that we would have gotten used to whatever the design was in like 40 seconds of watching the movie. Is the thing.
Yeah, I
like
think you're right.
you would just be like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. It does like who cares? Like it's fun. It's fun to make fun of it because it looks weird. But who cares? Like you really like I'm sure Yoda would look like shit to modern eyes if it was the first time we were seeing Yoda. We'd be like, oh my god, seriously, it's a puppet.
Yeah,
you know. but
remember when they tried to do Yoda puppet again in the Phantom Menace, but it didn't work as well.
Yeah,
I don't know if like they got like a new puppet and it was like, oh wait, it's clearer now. We can't use the same puppet. I don't know. Like, but Yoda in Phantom Menace looks terrible. Now, I'm not happy that they went CG Yoda after that, but it was awful.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a tangent. Continue.
I think the thing about this Sonic movie is I don't want more movies like this to exist, but I am excited for it. Like, I'm very glad that it does exist, and especially if I can't think of a better property for it to happen with than with the Sonic IP.
Yeah, bottom line, if I get to see Jim Carrey acting ridiculous for 90 minutes, it's cool.
Yeah.
I think I'm very much going to go into this movie with the same sort of anticipation I go into a new Neil Breen or Tommy Wiseau film. With like that's definitely the energy I'm taking into it. I think you're right, Scott. That's why I don't want the CGI to improve. I hope the last minute rush sends it backwards.
Yeah, that would be like if Neil Breen said, "I've heard you, I get it. I'm taking filmmaking lessons." It'd be like, no, don't do it.
I hope they do the equivalent of removing the CGI mustache from Sonic, where they just remove the teeth.
So great.
They color the teeth black so that you can only sometimes see them in certain lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this movie is at risk of just becoming mediocre, right? Which is the worst possible fate for it, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys, once again, before we go, I wanted to talk about Game of Thrones again. And I didn't plan to talk about every single episode on the show. It just keeps happening that I keep having things to say.
Yeah.
And I figured that as long as you guys also have things to say, we might as well just talk about them. So we're going to talk a little bit about season 8, episode 3. Spoilers for that episode, of course. Elliot, what'd you think?
So did you say episode 3?
Did I? I meant 4. Episode 4. The one that just came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I try so hard to still like the show, and I often find I do. Like, I'm someone who I just sit there and I kind of watch it and I enjoy it, and then it's like the second it's over, I think about it for about a minute, and I'm like, none of this makes any sense anymore. I think this episode to me was defined by the show suddenly laying on Daenerys having a bit of an insanity streak in her. And this is something that I think the show and the books have been dabbling with right from the start. So it's amazing to me that we can come in so late and still make it feel really forced and inorganic when it's essentially been being foreshadowed since the very first episode.
Yeah. I mean, the show has this tendency, especially the latter seasons, to be like everything that we're not mentioning right now in this episode, if not in this scene, we aren't even thinking about it, and you shouldn't be thinking about it either. Only care about the stuff that we just mentioned and reminded you of, and because like you just said, it doesn't hang together. It's incoherent, both in a plot and a character sense. But what's funny is I'm on the same page as you, where like I sent Scott a text while watching this episode, and I was like 1 hour in to the episode, and I was like, this is actually fine. What are people complaining about so much? And then well, I don't want to go 100% spoilers, but then like the sudden shocking thing happens.
I think we can spoiler it. We gave it.
Okay, yeah. So then the dragon...
Three spears managed to perfectly nail a dragon from behind a rock somehow.
From behind a rock that the dragon didn't see, despite the dragon being airborne. and I just burst out laughing. and the episode only goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
Especially because this is going to be like what the fourth time Euron has just shown up with a giant fleet of ships out of nowhere.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And like look, here's my thing. To the credit of the showrunners, finishing a show like this is really hard, right? They started the show, they were working off of books, but they didn't know the ending yet. They might have had like a very rough estimate of the ending, but like with shows like this, like they didn't know how many years the show was going to go on for when they were doing seasons 1, 2, and 3. They didn't know. They maybe even thought like the books would be done by the time they're starting to deal with this stuff. So suddenly they're in this situation where they have to land this enormous giant thing in a way that's satisfying people. And I get the difficulty with that. I get it. I just don't think they're equipped to do it. I really don't at this point.
I feel like, yeah, like obviously you're right. It's a monumental task. Like if this story was easy to finish, George R. R. Martin would have managed to do it by now.
Right.
Like, you know, he was stuck and they were sort of in a position where they had to push forward. But it does feel like there's almost this sense of, well, we couldn't do it 100% properly. So who cares? It feels like if they couldn't do it perfectly, they're not even really trying to do it that well at all.
Yeah.
Is almost the sense you sort of get.
I think that Dave and Dan have actively bad storytelling instincts. Like when it's left to them to make a storytelling choice, it's like what's the word for it? It's tone. It's like tone deaf. Like I think I always think about the fact that they introduced the Talisa character, and then they had her be stabbed in her pregnant belly at the Red Wedding, and just being like, you took something that was fine the way it was, and you just had to make it like extra gross and bad in a way that's like somehow like off-putting in a different way that almost like undermines the way that it was supposed to hurt. It's supposed to hurt because Caitlin and Rob die, and you know the fortunes of the heroes are completely upturned. But you had to add in this one upsetting element that you just knew was gonna just get to people, and it's like, why did you do that? And they do that all the time, where they'll go for like the just the almost like gross out, but I don't know if that's quite the right word either. Just like
I think shock value is something they really chase. Like looking at Who Killed the Night King last week, like it's very much they just go for what they think will be the coolest in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right that the coolest in the moment thing is what they're chasing, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, except that the story has to bend around that black hole of a cool moment in a way that is often ridiculous. Like I think like if you look at this last week's episode, it's like, okay, here's what we have to do. They start backwards. They start like, okay, by the end of this episode, we want people to think like Dany's going Mad Queen. How do we get there? And they work backwards from there, and it just ends up being like, okay, so we just yada yada yada. Then her dragon dies.
Somehow we'll figure that out later.
We'll figure that out. Yada yada yada. Missandei gets captured and killed
somehow.
It's just it doesn't matter. We'll figure that out. And that's where we end. And it's like that's what it feels like. It's just like I like the idea of this group like challenging like Dany being this character who's like she's been trying for this whole thing the entire 8 seasons. She's been like trying to unite people and connect people, and slowly but surely this conquest has ripped all the important people away from her, and now she's like lost just about everything and she's on the brink. I think that's inherently like a fun, interesting way to go with the character, but I just feel like we've yada 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 our way to it. Like we don't like spend the time earning those moments. Like it just like because it's just like and then it's just dragon dies. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever. None of this makes sense. Splitting your army doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. But we have to do it to get there. And that's the way I felt like throughout this entire episode. Because again, I think the idea of Jaime finally recognizing that he's in love with Brienne and consummating that relationship and finding a path to happiness, and then being called back to his old self because, yeah, he still has feelings for his sister. That's still really complicated stuff. I think that's a great way to do like the last bit of conflict for his character. But the way the show handled it was just like, it just kind of happened. Like it just like that, it's like, and the show like paid lip service to it as like, oh, well, the dragon's dead. So now Cersei's definitely going to die. So that's what called him back. And I'm just like, I don't buy it.
Yeah.
I just don't believe you. Like,
Right.
I don't like, you need to put in the work a little bit more, and you're just not interested in putting in the work anymore.
Yeah.
But like, I think the thing that frustrates me the most is if the show was just all around bad, I'd almost just be able to get over it. But there's still those glimmers of, like in this week's episode, I really liked the moment where Dany sort of looks around and sees how much everyone loves Jon, and that she's kind of alone, and so she just sort of leaves. And it was a very Viserys moment as well, which sort of tied into her being the Mad Queen a bit. And like, so there's just these good moments mixed in that just let me get my hopes up a bit more and really make me realize how weak some of the other bits are.
What's funny about this season is that I feel like I've just been very meh on Sophie Turner and Emilia Clarke's performances for the entire show up until this season, and now this season I'm like, oh, they're like they're great. It's a shame that like they're working with trash.
Yeah, like I feel bad for them because I think they're elevating bad material.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you that they are. Like I can't, poor Sophie Turner, I still can't believe they made her say, oh yeah, all those times I got raped, that's what made me stronger. I was just like, oh my God. Like, and the frustrating part about that is I know what they were going for there. Like I know the sentiment they were saying. It's like the bad things in our life that happen to us, allow us to like are part of who we have become, right? Like our trauma and the bad things that happen to us are part of us. But like Sansa is strong in spite of the bad things that happen to her, not because of the bad things that happen to her. And that's like just like a tone deaf, stupid oops moment that they didn't need to make. But I do think she delivered the line very well, despite them making her having to say it.
Right. It just didn't belong in that conversation with the Hound.
No,
like that. I don't even know why they were. I don't even know what the point of that interaction was. Like, I get that the point of that interaction was we need to have these two characters interact one more time before the end of the show, right? This is it. But that's a terrible reason for a character interaction to happen. So
do you think the show is just done with Sansa now? Like, we're done with her?
Well, no. I think we're going to cut back to her, but I don't think she's going to interact with the characters who are going south.
Yeah,
I've given up trying to predict what they're going to do next. Honestly,
I still think King's Landing's going to burn. I still think that's going to happen. I still think Tyrion's going to end up dead. I don't know how, but I think that's going to happen.
Didn't I make? What was my prediction that I made the other day?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I see. I don't think King's Landing's going to burn. I think that he's going to have to kill Cersei because she's going to light the wildfire. And that's gonna, and basically he's repeating his action of saving the city, or some twist around that type of thing.
Who's gonna be on the throne at the end?
Gendry is gonna be on the throne. Gendry Baratheon, the rightful heir to the
legitimized
throne.
Yeah, just way to go, Danny. Just bring another person to challenge your right to the throne.
I'm barely kidding about that, because that's such a George R. R. Martin thing to do, to be like let me set up a whole bunch of different ways this could go, and then the one that you just like laugh off as being ridiculous is obviously the one that's the way it's totally going to go. Because
so do you think that this is George's ending we're seeing right now?
I was about to ask the same question, because to me it doesn't feel like that at all.
Well, it depends. I think some things, yes, but not everything. Certainly, like I don't think that George is going to deal with the others in anything approaching the way that they were dealt with in this show, and so As far as as far as who ends up on the Iron Throne, I think yes. Though I don't know. Do you guys disagree?
I read an article today that said that was comparing the Iron Throne to the One Ring. And therefore the idea behind the article was, like the One Ring, the throne itself must be destroyed. The throne being a symbol of, monarchy rule. So I'm kind of, I liked the article. I thought it was pretty compelling, and I'm kind of the idea that we're going to end with like a council of the Seven Kingdoms and not a central monarch. That the Game of Thrones will end with the game being over forever.
And that makes,
it always seemed a bit silly to me, based on the books, to imagine that somebody would end the book series on the throne. It's a question of whether the show is going to stick to stuff like that anymore, because
I think you're right. I mean, to revise my answer, like, it was obvious that the Seven Kingdoms was Seven Kingdoms and was only united by foreigners who brought in super weapons and united them under the control of the super weapons. And as soon as the super weapons went extinct, within a short time period, they could no longer maintain control, and they were overthrown. So that there's no way to hold together the Seven Kingdoms without dragons. And I'm pretty sure all the dragons are going to die. Like that seems likely.
Okay, so you do think that she's going to lose the final dragon? She's gonna blow a 3-game lead.
I think she's probably gonna blow the final dragon somehow. Because otherwise, like you said, it's like too much of a this is a fantasy story. If the Dragon Queen keeps her dragon and sits on the throne, it's like, no, that's not what this story is. That's certainly not what the books are.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Jon has to complete his arc still. And I don't know if that means dying, or like, I don't know what that means anymore, because like in my head, Jon's arc was he's going to fight the Night King, but we didn't do that. So I don't know. We got 2 episodes left, guys. I guess we're going to talk about it next week. I guess we've just decided we're going to talk about Game of Thrones till it's over, but
looks like
I don't know. I'm just not excited anymore. I was excited the first 2 episodes, and I'm just like,
I think for me, I was just hoping. I'm one of those people who I don't think the books are ever going to really finish. I'm not convinced George can finish it in 2 more books, and so I was really just excited to get the major beats on how the story was going to end in the books. And now I don't even feel like we're really getting that. So I'm with you there. I'm just sort of sitting here, and I guess I'll watch it because there's only 2 episodes left. But I've really lost the attachment to it. Yeah.
All right, so that's Game of Thrones. Yay. Season 8, Episode 5, coming in a few days. Hooray. All right, well, that's all we had for you guys this week. If you have opinions on anything we talked about on Sonic, on Avatar, on Game of Thrones, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over at our Twitter account at doofmedia. Media MD friends, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
No,
Thanks
it's
for having
fun.
us.
I've loved talking about all these things. I didn't have much to say about Game of Thrones, but that happens, I guess.
Why don't you guys tell everyone about what you guys do?
Sure. So we run a few podcasts. We do Media MD, which is just a media recommendation podcast where we prescribe each other a piece of media and then talk about it the next fortnight. We also do a show where we dive into a story called Pact that you might have heard of, episode by episode, that's on, actually, by coincidence, this very same network.
Oh, wow, look at that.
That's cool.
Yeah. So Media MD, you can head to our website, which is mediamdpodcast.com, to find that, and Deep Impact is on that same things that we just talked about, the Doof Media site.
Yeah, I've spent some time with Pact this week. I'm halfway through the 3rd arc, so I'm very slowly catching up to you guys. And by catching up, I mean falling further behind. But I am still reading and listening. So you guys are doing great work. I really, really like it. You're really helping me enjoy the story more.
Yeah,
so.
And I am caught up, which I'm very proud of, because it's a lot of work. And I'm really, really enjoying the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're not subscribed to Media MD, Deep Impact, or this podcast, feel free to do so that you'll never miss an episode. You can find this show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And as Reuben and Elliot said, you can find this and all of our other shows, including Deep in Pact, over at doofmedia.com. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can donate $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help ensure we keep growing and keep making new stuff. Like this episode right here, the reason I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender was only because of the wonderful generosity of our longtime patron, A Bird. Yes, that's his name, A Bird. He's just a bird. Just what he is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, A Bird, for donating and supporting us and making us watch the show because we really liked it.
Yeah, thanks for starting the whole process of us doing a multi-episode series on Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yep.
Yeah, and also please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
Yep, we will see you guys next week when we... Oh, crap. I didn't have the schedule open. What are we doing? I think we're doing a Shyamalan movie, Matt.
All right.
That's what I think we're doing. I think we're doing the one with the aliens.
Awesome.
What's that called?
Signs. I love that one.
Signs. There we go. That's the one. Thank you.
I'm excited for that one.
I'm so good at this podcasting thing. All right, guys. We will see you all next week.
And you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.